Hello. When it comes to notorious drug lords in China, the name Chen Ping Ji cannot be ignored. Unlike ordinary drug traffickers, Chen Ping Ji started his business by riding a bicycle to each house in the streets of his village to sell heroin. From a retail seller, he gradually climbed the ranks to wholesale and eventually took over the crystal meth market, completely dominating and controlling prices. Through relentless effort, Chen Ping Ji turned Puning, a place that had no history of drug production in Guangdong, into the country's leading drug distribution center. In the underworld, he was known as Brother 4, the Kingpin of Puning, a strategic location where drugs from the Golden Triangle flowed into China. In 1999, Chinese police busted a major drug case, seizing 11 tons of crystal meth packed in 554 boxes, each weighing 20 kilograms with a purity of up to 99%. Hundreds of boxes filled the entire sports field, and the staggering 11-ton figure was double the total amount of crystal meth seized globally in the entire year of 1998. If this amount of meth had been sold, it would have been worth around $55 billion US. This enormous stockpile belonged to Chen Ping Ji and his accomplice, Liu Xiaohua. The case made Liu Xiaohua's name known beyond China's borders, even attracting the attention of notorious drug lords like El Chapo in Mexico, who wished to collaborate with him. Aside from the 11 tons of drugs seized, Chen Ping Ji had already divided an additional 19 tons of crystal meth for sale in Japan, the US, the Philippines, and Hong Kong. Japan received about 10 tons, the US 6 tons, and the Philippines and Hong Kong each received over 2 tons. This story revolves around the life of Chen Ping Ji, the infamous crystal meth kingpin. Please note that the content in this video is for informational and educational purposes and does not glorify or romanticize criminal activities. Chen Ping Ji was born in 1956 in Chishui Village, Lusha Town, Ningxia, Guangdong Province. His family was very poor. He had an older brother and an older sister, and all 5 members of his family squeezed into a small 15-square-meter house. His father died early in an accident, leaving the economic burden on his disabled mother. As a child, Chen Ping Ji had to beg with his mother just to survive. Due to the extreme poverty, he had to drop out of junior high school to return home and help his mother by working on the farm. He sold chickens, ducks, and fish, bringing them from other places to resell for a profit, and later on he engaged in any business that could earn him money. In 1980, at the age of 24, Chen Ping Ji married a girl from the same village named Chen Baoyu. Born in 1961, she was 5 years younger than Chen Ping Ji. She was incredibly beautiful and was considered the village's belle, admired by many men. However, she only had eyes for Chen Ping Ji. At that time, their life was so difficult that the couple had to give their firstborn child to someone else to raise because they couldn't afford to care for him. Although Chen Ping Ji dropped out of school during junior high, he had a sharp business mind. After some time observing, he saw an opportunity to escape poverty and traveled to Hunan to trade traditional Chinese medicine. In just 2 to 3 years, he earned hundreds of thousands of yuan from the medicinal trade. This success quickly elevated him from poverty, making him one of the wealthiest and most prominent households in the traditional medicine trading circles by the 1990s. When the city of Puning and Guangzhou developed a robust logistics system, drug trafficking became more convenient. The Chaoshan area quickly became a major drug distribution hub within the country. Tempted by money, Chen Ping Ji got involved in drug transactions. At first, the drugs Chen Ping Ji trafficked mainly consisted of opium powder, heroin, and crystal meth. Thanks to his experience and connections in the medicinal herb trade, Chen Ping Ji quickly established his own drug trafficking network. Gradually, Chen Ping Ji became the largest drug dealer in Puning. However, with more money, both he and his wife Chen Baoyu began to worry. They realized that keeping large sums of money at home was unsafe and depositing it in the bank could draw unwanted attention. So while continuing to traffic drugs to earn more cash, they also had to find ways to spend the money. Chen Ping Ji decided to invest the money in several ways. First, he bought the 5th and 6th floors of a residential building in Puning as their home. At the same time, he purchased 2 shops on the lower floors and started an ornamental fish business. Apart from buying property and running a business, Chen Ping Ji's second largest expenditure was charitable donations, Many found it hard to believe, but in Puning there is a museum called Taidaguan, which honors overseas Chinese and social figures who contributed to the construction of local schools. In Taidaguan there is a portrait of a rather handsome and upright-looking man. That man is none other than Chen Ping Ji, a well-known figure in the region. According to unofficial statistics over 5 years, Chen Ping Ji donated more than 300,000 yuan for the construction of schools, an enormous sum at that time, not stopping at investing in schools. After the economic reforms, Chen Ping Ji also invested in 2 village enterprises, a conical hat factory and a garment factory. During the mid-1980s, as the garment industry boomed, Chen Ping Ji amassed a significant fortune by investing in the garment market in Puning, one of the 10 largest specialized markets at the time. Throughout this period, Chen Ping Ji continued to donate to the village. In addition to the 300,000 yuan for schools, he invested nearly 1 million yuan in public welfare projects in the village. As a result, almost everywhere that had a donor's name engraved Chen Ping Ji's name could be found. In reality, this charitable work served as a mask to conceal his crimes and was also a way to seek psychological solace. Through these actions, Chen Ping Ji won the trust of the villagers, receiving their full support and admiration. In 1992, Chinese armed police surrounded the town of Pingyuan, Yunnan province, a key entry point for drugs from the Golden Triangle into China. The drug traffickers there used machine guns, grenade launchers, and anti-tank mines to engage in fierce battles with the police forces. After 81 days, 854 drug traffickers were arrested and over 1,000 guns were confiscated. The town of Pingyuan, a major drug hotspot in the region, was successfully eradicated, restoring peace to the local population. Although he lost a vital source of drugs, but Chen Ping Ji's ambition remained unshaken. His goal was to become the biggest drug lord in Guangdong province and even the leader of the Chinese drug world in Southeast Asia. In his mind, to become a true drug kingpin, he had to have the capability to produce drugs himself. Only by controlling the supply could he dominate the market and avoid competition. By the mid-1990s, the drug market began to experience significant changes. Traditional drugs, especially heroin, started losing their appeal, and new drugs in the methamphetamine family, particularly crystal meth, became increasingly popular among addicts. This shift worried Chen Ping Ji because the drugs he had were all supplied by others. Even though his business had grown large, but he was merely a middleman. With the changing market, Chen Ping Ji understood that if he wanted long-term success, he needed to start producing drugs himself instead of merely reselling them. At this time, one of Chen Ping Ji's subordinates introduced him to Lu Xiaohua, a man who was being intensely pursued by Chinese police for producing large quantities of crystal meth. Chen Ping Ji quickly made contact and partnered with Lu Xiaohua. This collaboration propelled both of them beyond China's borders, turning them into a legendary duo that shook the world. Lu Xiaohua took only 2 nights to refine 1 ton of crystal meth at Chen Ping Ji's house, achieving a purity level of 85%. The two quickly reached an agreement. Lu Xiaohua would handle the procurement of raw materials and the production of drugs, while Chen Ping Ji would take care of the finances and drug distribution. It's worth noting that Chen Ping Ji was very generous. In their first deal, he spent $3.7 million for Lu Xiaohua to freely acquire the necessary materials and equipment. They rented an abandoned handbag factory owned by Chen Ping Ji's brother-in-law and transformed it into a production line for pure crystal meth with a capacity of up to 1 ton per day. However, after moving the drug production operation, Chen Ping Ji and Lu Xiaohua ran into major trouble as the crystal meth kept failing to crystallize properly. They later discovered the reason. Chen Ping Ji's brother-in-law had deliberately added water to the mixture every night, disrupting the chemical balance. His motive was fear that if production went too smoothly, Lu Xiaohua would vacate the factory sooner and take back the deposit. So he sabotaged the process to extend the rental period and earn more from the factory lease. Another issue was the large amounts of wastewater generated during the meth production process, which polluted the pond near the factory and caused a massive die-off of fish. This angered the local fishermen, who reported the pollution to the local authorities. To avoid further complications, they were forced to move the factory to Ningxia. At that time, China was implementing its strategy of opening up and developing the Northwest region. At the end of August 1998, Liu Xiaohua, under the name of the Guangdong-based fishing company, opened a new factory in Yinchuan, Ningxia. Within just 10 months of resuming production, they had manufactured 31 tons of crystal meth. Using various transportation methods such as planes and trucks, this quantity of drugs was moved to warehouses in Puning, Guangdong, for Chen Ping Ji to sell. However, the efficiency of production created a problem for Chen Ping Ji. He didn't want to sell the drugs too quickly. Instead, he aimed to create an artificial scarcity to drive prices higher. In October 1999, just 1 year after moving to Ningxia, Chen Ping Ji and Liu Xiaohua decided to temporarily halt production to sell off the current stockpile of drugs before producing a new batch. During this time, the two indulged in a lavish and decadent lifestyle. In November 1999, while reviewing financial records with Chen Ping Ji, Liu Xiaohua noted down the quantities of each batch of crystal meth on hotel stationery, which would later become critical evidence for the police. On November 4th, 1999, more than 100 kilograms of heroin that Chen Ping Ji had purchased from Tan Shaolin and smuggled into China were being tracked by the police. The anti-narcotics team set up an ambush, seizing the entire shipment along with several of Chen Ping Ji's associates. The police then discovered another suspicious warehouse. When they broke down the door, they were stunned to find hundreds of boxes of crystal meth packed into the compound's sports field. In total, there were 11 tons of crystal meth with a purity of 99%, far higher than the typical market product. This amount was double the total quantity of crystal meth seized worldwide in 1998, and only Liu Xiaohua could produce such pure meth. Meanwhile, Chen Ping Ji had quickly fled. From November 4th, 1999, the police and Chen Ping Ji began a chase that lasted for years. The Guangdong police were certain that he was still hiding within the country, as both Chen Ping Ji and his wife, Chen Baonak, had disappeared at the same time. Furthermore, neither of them spoke any foreign languages. Chen Baonak could barely speak Mandarin, making it unlikely they could live abroad. The police also froze all of his bank accounts, preventing him from withdrawing any money. However, Chen Ping Ji had already prepared cash beforehand. He bought 2 fake passports. Using the names Lin Jinxian and Chen Yu, escaped with his wife from Guangxi to Vietnam, and then from Vietnam to Bangkok, Thailand. In Bangkok, Chen Ping Ji nearly cut off all ties with his past, as he couldn't speak any foreign languages. Even renting a house had to be done through Chinese newspapers. Eventually, they reluctantly settled in Bangkok and began their new life. While Chen Ping Ji lived a secretive and quiet life in Thailand, Chinese police continued their search for him within the country. They even investigated over 5,000 businessmen from Puning who were conducting business in Yunnan, but found no leads. The hunt for Chen Ping Ji hit a dead end until a breakthrough occurred. After Tan Shaolin was captured in Myanmar, the police realized that Chen Ping Ji might have fled abroad. They then shifted their search to Southeast Asia. Interestingly, the reason Chen Ping Ji and his wife were discovered was rather unique. In Bangkok, they lived anonymously with no contact with family, but their love for their son, who had illegally migrated to Hong Kong, led to their exposure. To pray for their son's safety, they frequently visited temples to burn incense and worship. In all other circumstances, Chen Ping Ji and his wife used fake names, but in front of the Buddha. He used his real name because he believed he could not deceive the Buddha. Chen Ping Ji never imagined that this habit of visiting temples would lead to his downfall. His signature left at the temples became the most crucial clue. The police began investigating hundreds of temples and expanded their search within the Chinese community in Bangkok. Since the Chinese population in Bangkok wasn't large, the police quickly discovered Chen Ping Ji's hideout and planned his arrest. On November 4th, 2003, exactly 4 years after the events of November 4th, 1999, Chen Ping Ji and Chen Baonak were arrested in Thailand, bringing an end to the dramatic flight of this notorious drug lord. On March 23, 2005, Chen Ping Ji's trial officially began. He hired 12 lawyers to defend him, trying to deny the charges. His lawyers argued that fleeing across the border to avoid the law did not constitute a criminal offense under the criminal code. They also claimed that Chen Ping Ji was not the mastermind, but merely an accomplice. Chen Ping Ji testified that the factory he opened in Puning was only for producing fragrances, and the $12 million he gave to Liu Xiaohua was a loan for producing fragrances and cigarettes. He claimed that Liu Xiaohua had deceived him and hadn't repaid any of the money. Arrogantly, Chen Ping Ji demanded to confront Liu Xiaohua in court. However, Liu Xiaohua confessed to the police that he had produced 31 tons of crystal meth. After Chen Ping Ji was captured, everyone turned against him, rushing to testify in order to reduce their own sentences. Faced with irrefutable evidence from the police, Chen Ping Ji angrily shouted, "That's not true. Everything you're saying is a complete fabrication." On December 24th, 2006, the Guangdong Intermediate People's Court sentenced Chen Ping Ji to death for the production, trafficking, and transportation of drugs, as well as illegal border crossing. His wife, Chen Bao-nak, was sentenced to 11.5 years in prison for drug production and illegal border crossing. On September 9th, 2009, Chen Ping Ji was executed in Guangzhou, marking the end of an era of infamous crystal meth trafficking in China. Although Chen Ping Ji was punished, he likely won't be the last drug dealer. However, the fate of people like him always leads to destruction. Life offers many choices, but drugs are never one of them. Drugs bring only destruction, shattered families, and lost lives. Saying no to drugs is the best way to protect ourselves and the beautiful world around us. This story is shared for educational purposes, to raise awareness and not to glorify or romanticize criminals. A group of Colombians was roaming the streets of Miami. They were members of a notorious gang known as the Cocaine Cowboys. Their destination was a shopping center, and their target was a liquor store. Their mission is to eliminate a rival gang dealing cocaine. When the assassins arrived, they shocked everyone with a bold execution in broad daylight. The result was the deaths of 2 notorious cocaine dealers at the scene, while 2 innocent store employees were seriously injured. The sheer disregard for human life at the crime scene sent shockwaves through South Florida like never before. Later, the police found a specially modified truck they believed belonged to the assassins. This war truck was armored with 6mm thick steel and had gun ports cut into the sides. Inside, they discovered a cache of modern weapons. At the time, police officers were still using 6-shot revolvers, while these killers were equipped with Uzi submachine guns, leaving the police completely stunned by the situation. All the victims were Colombian drug dealers, so the police decided to search for clues within the Colombian immigrant community in Miami. However, no one had the courage to speak up, making the investigation extremely difficult. These Colombians were very tight-lipped because the massacre was part of something far more dangerous. At that time, Miami saw a sudden spike in the murder rate, with killings rising from about 80 to 100 per year to nearly 300 to 400. Police frequently found bodies shot dead in cars, restaurants, or other public places. The city had about 100,000 criminals and 350 rival gangs slaughtering each other to gain control over drug territory. The murders were brutal, and they were all connected to a new booming business in Miami: cocaine trafficking. Cocaine was being imported into Miami by the ton via boats, planes, and hidden in shipments. No longer just an expensive drug reserved for lavish celebrity parties, cocaine fueled a new wave of organized crime. It became easily accessible on the streets and was destroying the lives of millions of U.S. Miami police were determined to find out which Colombian kingpin was behind these bloody executions. They began questioning street-level drug dealers, threatening to imprison them unless they provided information about their suppliers. The dealers started talking, and they all mentioned one name: Griselda Blanco, the queen of cocaine. Griselda Blanco. The Colombian drug queenpin entered the cocaine trade in the early 1970s when Pablo Escobar was still stealing cars to make a living. At the height of her career, Blanco was believed to be smuggling over $80 million worth of cocaine into the U.S. each month. What made Blanco stand out was her terrifying ruthlessness. Blanco became one of the most dangerous cocaine traffickers in the world, believed to have ordered at least 250 murders and possibly connected to as many as 2,000. If you owed her money and refused to pay, she would kill you. If you paid her late, she would kill you. Sometimes she killed people just for amusement. So how did a young girl who grew up in poverty on the harsh streets of Colombia manage to build a multi-billion-dollar drug empire? In today's story, we will delve into the life and career of Griselda Blanco. This story is intended to inform and educate, not to glorify or romanticize criminal activities. Griselda Blanco was born on February 15, 1943, in Cartagena, Colombia, on the country's northern coast. Blanco lived with her mother, Anna, in a poor slum outside the city. Her neighborhood, Barrio Antioquia, was a crime-ridden area filled with gangsters and murderers. Blanco grew up in such a notorious criminal district that it was designated as a tolerance zone, meaning it was the city's red light district, where illegal activities elsewhere were legalized. Blanco began her life of crime by picking pockets, but she quickly escalated. According to reports, when she was just 11 years old, she and her friends kidnapped a boy from an affluent neighborhood for ransom. When the boy's parents didn't take the threat seriously, Blanco, without hesitation, took the boy's life, becoming a cold-blooded killer before even reaching her teenage years. This was a clear sign that she would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. At 13, Blanco had an older boyfriend named Carlos Trujillo, a Colombian human trafficker. Over 5 years, he taught her the dark tricks of forging passports, and she quickly became an expert in creating fake identities. Together, they smuggled thousands of people into the U.S. By the age of 19, Blanco and Carlos were married and had 3 sons. However, by the late 1960s, Blanco divorced Carlos and later killed him over a business dispute. Not long after, Blanco met and married Alberto Bravo. Unlike human trafficking, Bravo dealt in cocaine, and by the early 1970s, he had amassed a fortune of $26,000, a huge sum at the time. In Medellin, the fastest way to get rich was by transporting cocaine to the U.S., where it was often sold for 10 times the price it commanded in Colombia. So like many others, Bravo and Blanco decided to chase the American dream. In the early 1970s, Bravo and Blanco illegally immigrated to New York. They settled in Queens and quickly expanded their cocaine distribution network. The constant challenge was how to safely transport cocaine into the U.S. With her cunning mind, Blanco devised a special type of clothing that allowed drugs to be hidden around the body, making them look like the natural curves of women. She only selected Colombian women to act as drug mules and trained them to flaunt their bodies to distract border agents. Blanco encouraged these women to dress seductively and flirt with customs officers. No one suspected that these elegantly dressed, alluring women were smuggling cocaine hidden in their bras. These mules landed in New York, where Blanco's underground distribution network awaited, and within hours cocaine flooded the streets. By the mid-1970s, Griselda Blanco and her husband, Alberto Bravo, had earned around $500 million in cash from their drug business. This was also when Pablo Escobar first emerged in the drug trade, fueling the business boom. Bravo returned to Colombia to restructure their export network. However, this wave of cocaine drew the attention of the New York police and the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. They launched a secret operation called Operation Banshee to trace the origins of the cocaine. Operation Banshee led to Blanco and over 30 of her associates being indicted on federal drug conspiracy charges in April 1975. It was the largest cocaine case in U.S. history at the time. However, when federal agents arrived to arrest Blanco, she had vanished without a trace. Blanco used every trick her ex-husband Carlos Trujillo, a document forging specialist, had taught her, making it impossible for law enforcement to track her. Each time she moved, she used a different fake identity. An agent central to Operation Banshee, Bob Palumbo, recalled, "We had enough evidence to charge her with drug trafficking conspiracy, but she completely disappeared without a trace." In reality, Blanco had slipped out of the U.S. and returned to Colombia just before the indictment. She returned not only to avoid capture, but also to confront her husband, Bravo, as she was dissatisfied with how he managed their massive cocaine empire. Blanco suspected that Bravo had embezzled millions of dollars from their profits. After a heated argument in the parking lot of a nightclub outside Bogota, Blanco pulled a gun and shot Bravo dead, earning her the nickname the Black Widow. With the death of her second husband, Blanco gained complete control of her drug empire. However, as Blanco's power grew, She faced a new and formidable rival, Pablo Escobar, the leader of a ruthless cartel encroaching on her territory. Escobar, known as the King of Cocaine, became the wealthiest criminal in history, turning Bogotá, Colombia, into the death capital of the world. By the end of 1975, Blanco and Escobar were locked in a deadly battle, each with their own teams of assassins hunting and eliminating one another. Blanco realized that to protect her massive cocaine empire from Escobar's competition, she had to escalate her violent tactics. She pioneered bold assassination methods using motorcycles, a signature move on the streets of Medellin. These reckless actions kept Escobar on guard. Ultimately, Escobar bribed officials to take control of the Medellin airport, which became Blanco's main distribution route into the U.S. Pushed out of Medellin by Escobar and fleeing the DEA in New York, Blanco had no place left to return to in her Colombian homeland. Yet with her talent for disguise and ability to vanish like a ghost, Blanco once again eluded all pursuits. 3 years after Operation Banshee began, the DEA's hunt for the Black Widow in New York hit a dead end. Agents wondered if she had retired from the cocaine trade or perhaps had been killed. However, in 1976, a series of events in Florida provided a new lead. Organized crime had spread across the sunny paradise of Florida, with Miami becoming the focal point. The DEA began to suspect that the Black Widow was no longer in hiding but had returned to the U.S. Through sources, customs officials finally identified her, and they were able to put a face to the feared name at last. Facing arrest warrants and dangers from New York's mafia, Blanco relocated to a new place, Miami, where she quickly rose to become the queen of cocaine. In 1978, she married her third husband, Dario Sepulveda, a bank robber, and that same year her fourth son, Michael Corleone, was born. She named her son after the character in Al Pacino's The Godfather, and the title Godfather seemed to become the guiding principle of Blanco's criminal actions. Blanco's arrival in Miami was pivotal, as the local cocaine market was then controlled by a group of Cuban exiles and a few renegade Americans. However, Miami had become the gateway to the Latin American underworld, and Blanco was not satisfied with sharing profits. She wanted to dominate the entire drug market. By the late 1970s, with the support of a team of hitmen led by Jorge Rivi Ayala, Blanco launched a violent campaign to eliminate her rivals and expand her territory. As her rivals were gradually eliminated, Blanco grew even wealthier in Miami, living a life of luxury with lavish homes, expensive cars, and even a private jet. She hosted wild parties attended by many influential figures in the criminal world. Although she had been driven out of Medellin, Blanco and Pablo Escobar continued their conflict in Miami. The competition between various factions, including the Medellin cartel, escalated the violence. From 1979 to 1984, South Florida became a true war zone. The Miami Drug War, also known as the Cocaine Cowboy Era, officially began on July 11th, 1979, when the ruthless Cocaine Cowboys gang assassinated a rival in broad daylight at the Dadeland Mall. Police believed that Blanco had set up her headquarters in Miami and was the instigator behind the bloody gang wars. By the early 1980s, 70% of the cocaine and marijuana entering the U.S. came through Miami, and the death toll began to skyrocket. In the first 5 months of 1980, Miami witnessed 75 murders, and that number rose to 175 in the last 7 months of the year. By 1981, Miami had become not only the murder capital of the U.S., but of the world, with Blanco at the center of this storm. Blanco instilled fear in everyone, including other drug lords. While others killed with a purpose, Blanco killed without reason. Her most trusted hitman, Rivi Ayala, later recounted that when Blanco ordered a hit, not only the target, but anyone in the vicinity, including women and children, had to die. During her bloody reign in Florida, the Black Widow ordered up to 200 retaliatory assassinations each month. Her empire was smuggling over a ton of cocaine into the U.S. and generating $80 million in monthly profits. By late 1983, Blanco's third husband, Dario Sepulveda, had grown tired of life in Miami and had fallen in love with another woman. He kidnapped their son, Michael Corleone, and returned to Colombia. When Blanco found out, she was so enraged that she hired hitmen in her homeland to disguise themselves as police and shoot Dario dead right in front of their son. Despite the growing number of enemies, but Blanco continued to escalate the violence. One example of her brutality was when she ordered the torture and murder of a Mexican drug supplier because she did not want to repay the $1.8 million she owed him. The victim's body was later dumped in a canal. Blanco did not hesitate to kill a member of the Ochoa family, who, along with Pablo Escobar, had founded the Medellin cartel. These were not people who forgave easily, and Blanco's actions sparked their desire for revenge. Meanwhile, both Miami police and the DEA believed that Blanco was behind the numerous street massacres, but had no idea where she was operating from. To bring Blanco to justice, they needed to lure her out of hiding and gather enough solid evidence to convict her. Finally, through an informant, the DEA got close to Blanco's son, Dixon Trujillo. Through investigations and wiretapping, the police discovered that Blanco had relocated to Irvine, California, to avoid pressure from enemies and law enforcement in Miami. After a decades-long pursuit, the authorities could not let the Black Widow slip through their fingers again. Within months, all three of Blanco's sons were arrested in DEA drug operations. In 1985, Blanco was sentenced to nearly 20 years in prison for drug trafficking, marking a new chapter in her life behind bars. Charles Cosby, a cocaine dealer in Orlando, had been following the news of Blanco's arrest and decided to try reaching out to her through a mutual acquaintance, a Panamanian woman named Manuela. After being introduced, Cosby began writing letters to Blanco, gradually moving to phone contact, and finally, after about 9 months, he visited her in person at FCI Dublin, a federal women's prison in California. Their relationship quickly progressed, with Cosby recalling that during the first visit, Blanco agreed to give him 50 kilograms of cocaine to sell as a test. After succeeding in earning $2 million, Cosby received another 100 kilograms the following month and sold it all. From then on, he became both her lover and business partner. With the help of bribed prison staff, Cosby claimed that from 1986 to around 1997, despite being in prison, Blanco continued to run her cocaine empire, earning around $50 million annually. However, as time passed and Blanco's release date approached, she realized that the Miami District Attorney's Office was planning to prosecute her for first-degree murder in Florida, with the death penalty looming over her. The biggest blow came in 1994 when Rivi Ayala, Blanco's most loyal hitman, became the key witness in the case against her. This devastated Blanco, as Ayala had enough evidence to send her to the electric chair multiple times. In her desperation, Blanco devised a bold plan. According to Charles Cosby, she secretly passed him a note with the scribbled characters JFK 5 Nay. Confused, Cosby asked Blanco what it meant, and she explained that it was a plan to kidnap John F. Kennedy Jr., the son of the late President John F. Kennedy, in New York in exchange for her freedom. They intended to hold Kennedy hostage until Blanco was released and sent to Colombia, while the kidnappers would also receive a $5 million ransom. According to Cosby, he didn't want to be involved in Blanco's crazy scheme, which led to the end of their relationship, but Blanco remained determined to carry out the plan without Cosby. Rumor has it that the kidnappers almost succeeded when they surrounded John F. Kennedy Jr. while he was walking his dog. However, a passing police patrol car scared them off, forcing them to flee. With the kidnapping plan foiled, Blanco's time was running out. If Rivi Ayala testified against her, she would undoubtedly be sentenced to death. However, luck was on her side when a sex scandal involving Ayala and clerks in the prosecutor's office was exposed, forcing the prosecutor to make a deal with Blanco. As a result, she avoided the death penalty and was sentenced to an additional 7 years in prison. By 2004, Blanco was released and deported to Colombia at the age of 61. By then, the old gangs had disbanded, allowing Blanco to live peacefully for another 8 years in Medellin. However, in 2012, at the age of 69, Blanco met a grim fate. She was shot twice in the head at a butcher shop in Medellin in a motorcycle assassination, the very method of killing she had pioneered years before. Blanco's assassin remains unidentified to this day. For the agents who had spent decades hunting her, This outcome was not surprising. Her history of drug dealing and life on the run had proven that the drug trade is a dead-end path, and the fate of drug lords inevitably leads to their downfall. This story is intended for informational and educational purposes, not to glorify or romanticize criminal activities. What are your thoughts on this story? Feel free to leave a comment below so others can read your opinions. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support my channel. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.